What if you tried to learn a language from a politician just by listening to their speeches? And if you did a 50 or 100-day language learning challenge just based on political content, how eloquent could you get? And what better options do we have than Donald Trump and Kamala Harris? And I guess we'll throw in Barack Obama as a control given his oratory prowess. So I analyzed all the transcripts of their speeches and public appearances from their times in the White House to see what we could learn about how they speak and what you could learn about English from each one of them.
A new sense of common purpose. Yes, we can.
Nobody builds walls better than me, believe me.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
In a world that is increasingly politicized, conversations about democracy and elections are everyday occurrences, whether that's socially, in mainstream media, or online. And it's not just conversations about politics, we also hear from politicians quite a lot, especially those leading countries around the world. But all this political stuff happens in every language and is just data to learn from. And when I say learn from, I mean, what would happen if you tried to learn a language from the leaders of a country? And given that every country has its own political leaders and climate, these lessons do generalize if you're learning another language like Spanish or German or Japanese or Mandarin, etc. Every White House administration publishes an exhaustive collection of speeches and remarks from the president and the vice president. So we have hundreds of pages of proofread, true-to-reality text from the orange one during his 4 years in office and Biden 2.0 during her 4 years as vice president. So I loaded up speeches from each of the politicians representing about 30,000 words from each. I fed that data into an algorithm that models how we learn languages based on Stephen Krashen's input hypothesis and other linguistics research that says that we pick up a word after we've seen it and understood it after about 20 exposures to the word. First of all, unsurprisingly, when we look at the most common words that are used, that tells us more about the English language than any of the individual politicians. But remove what we call stop words, like functional grammar words, and we start to see a more statesman-like vocabulary that reflects a broader political discussion. Across politicians at the national stage, we see words like America and work and people and thank top the list. But what are Kamala, Trump, and Obama using most in relation to the other politicians? Here are the top words that each of them said at least 3 times more often than both of the others. I love when data reflects our intuition. Trump, the very great king of tremendous descriptions. Really incredible. And let me be clear, Obama is about changing our progress with Republicans. And Kamala is the rabble-rouser using violence and laws to give us leadership, moments, and issues. All jokes aside, these words do broadly align with the public perception of what each candidate represents. Perusing the combined 12,000 unique words across these 3 candidates, we see some interesting patterns. Obama focused more on the future, kids, young people, college, and the economy. Kamala also speaks more about women, mothers, and abortion. And Trump, the businessman, focuses on deals and agreements and trade with a finality of language associated with words like never and ever. A further point is that each one of them uses a similar number of unique words. And while Kamala's counts are about 20% lower than the 2 former presidents, that's likely related to her role as a vice president. Particularly for White House engagements, her remarks are shorter on average, which means that her welcomes and her thank yous eat into her ability to make word salad. But what I find most motivating about trying to learn a language from a political candidate is looking at the overlap between the candidates that we have. When you look at the words that are mentioned the 20 times that you'd need to learn them just through immersion alone, the candidates share 40 to 50% of them. Yes, Trump, Kamala, and Obama have their different visions for the world, but you learn a lot of the same linguistically from each of them. So while Obama talks about change and Kamala talks about leaders and everything is incredible to Trump, you'd still learn each of those words from each of the 3 candidates. So now, let's say that you did a 50-day challenge where every day you read through one speech in its entirety in depth and you saw what words you acquired over the course of the 50-day challenge. Again, from linguistics research, that means we're talking about any word that you've seen and understood in context at least 20 times. What would the results look like for a challenge for Trump versus Kamala versus Obama? At an average of 600 words per speech per day, here are the learning curves of all of the words that you would have acquired. Well. Okay, not a huge difference between our 3 contenders, and you'd learn 600 words from any one that you picked. But if you're up in arms saying that this isn't fair because Trump uses fewer words more often, that's actually not the case. As you can see, Trump and Kamala have similar distributions for the words they use only 1, 2, or 3 times, but most words are said less than the 20 times you'd need to learn them naturally over the course of your 50-day challenge. But what's even more wild is that earlier this year I did a video analyzing all of the dialogue in Spongebob, and if you did a 50-day challenge with Spongebob versus the presidential candidates one that I just mentioned, there's still about a 20% overlap between the words that you'd learn from a bunch of childish characters and Spongebob. After all this exploring, there are a few tangible lessons that I want to draw from here. Lesson number 1. If you're trying to learn a language, find someone giving speeches, writing books, or making content that gets you excited. As we saw before, learning 600 words over the course of a 50-day challenge can happen, regardless of who you're reading, and that number goes up the more time you spend with the language. And as we explored in other videos on this channel, that rate of learning can come from different types of content or activities. Lesson number 2. If you're learning another language and have some interest in the culture or the countries that use that language, then listening into what politicians are saying can both enhance your worldliness and your language learning. You'll be carving out new realms of understanding in the language and also be better prepared as you interact with native speakers. And lesson number 3. If you're watching this before the 2024 US election, go out and vote. And no, I don't care who you're voting for. And if you're in another country or learning a language other than English, see if there's an upcoming election that you can use to inform your language learning. And when there is an election in your area, go out and vote. And if all this political divisiveness makes it feel like we're on the precipice of our own mutually assured destruction, take a break from the internet for a while. That's all I've got for this one. Catch you in the next one.